Hi, I'm Danielle Teichene.
And I'm Adam Brown.
And this week on Our Gamified World, we look at motivation and habit building.
We could talk for hours on this subject. We're actually really fortunate that we've been able to interview a gamification practitioner, Vicky Hsu, an attorney, writer, former trucker, and the CEO, co-founder, and Royal Chancellor of the gamified motivational app Habitica. She sounds so much cooler than me.
Yeah, me too.
Thank you so much again for chatting to us. I'm wondering maybe a great place to start would be if you would tell us a bit about your story personally.
Yeah, so I had basically always been interested in productivity and optimization. I was the classic underachiever throughout my entire academic career in terms of there were things that I knew I could do better on, but just could not bring myself to do. And that remained true throughout undergraduate, which I did pull myself together enough to get out in 2.5 years with honors, and then realized that I didn't know what to do, so I may as well go to law school. And law school is where I really learned that discipline counts for a lot, right? And I needed extra structure to instill that discipline. And as it turns out, Habitica was not out yet. I did not discover it till well after I had graduated, but it was sort of this moment of recognition where I was like, this is the thing that I had needed back in law school just to get everything in gear and make sure that I was actually achieving those goals that I had set for myself. So that was like the first wake-up call.
Motivation and discipline and habit building are absolutely central to Habitica. And it's interesting that you say that you've sort of encountered challenges in your motivation in the past. Do you still fail? Do you still slip in your own activities at times?
Oh, constantly. I think one of the things for me that maybe a lot of people who use Habitica don't realize is when the game gets easy, that's usually the sign that you've leveled up, right? And you have to keep moving and move on to the next level and get bigger challenges or different challenges in order for the game to remain fresh and interesting. So in my case, what was formerly easy can frequently get moved off the dashboard, or alternatively, I make it more difficult. So the 2 minutes of meditation per day became 5 minutes, became 10 minutes, became 20 minutes. And then, of course, every once in a while, something happens to my schedule. It gets completely disrupted. I have a hard time sitting still for 20 minutes. And then I was like, and that's when I recognized that, well, I haven't hit this daily for a few days now. Maybe I should drop it down in difficulty so it feels a little more attainable, and then start rebuilding that cycle.
I think that's where the strength of Habitica really is as well. It does encourage you to keep reflecting on what difficulty setting you've got to have. You know, you've got to challenge yourself or else it doesn't work. And that's the great thing about it. It actually doesn't force you to do it as much as it encourages you to keep going.
Exactly. The daily system is set up in such a way that it does sort of require you to reflect. And I've definitely seen feedback on the app where it didn't work. Well, and that's because, it didn't work because it's not a silver bullet, right? At least not yet. we have thoughts about how we can make that work even better for more kinds of people. But currently, as it's set up, the daily system really just encourages daily reflection in terms of how you're going about your day, how you're spending time. And maybe the thing that's extremely difficult to do is not the thing that you should be focusing on, because you need to tackle whatever is underlying your inability to get to it, right? By way of example, I have what is technically a very easy daily on my list, which is to make the bed every morning. And most days I hit it, but the instant I stop doing it consistently is usually a sign that I need to go take a look at what's bothering me, right? It's an early warning system for me. And without that daily check-in, oh yeah, did I make the bed? Great, I don't have to think about it. Frequently, I have just discovered that if I just remove that from my list entirely, then I miss that early warning sign about needing to re-examine where I am and what I'm prioritizing in my day.
Terrific. What kind of feedback have you seen from users of Habitica? What have they commented on?
There are plenty. In the aggregate, there have been a couple people who've managed to quit smoking. Some people who've used it to gain weight, also to lose weight. And then there's a whole host of freelancers in particular who are using it to meet work deadlines. So we're also popular with students, college students and grad students in particular, who are just using it to stay on top of their coursework. And then in terms of specific success stories, I usually talk about one of our more well-known users whose name is Mary Robinette Kowal. She is an award-winning science fiction and fantasy writer, and in fact has a recent book out. We met her one year at San Diego Comic-Con, and she just told us that this is how she had managed her depression, which she's been diagnosed with and is very open about. So between Habitica and another app she uses called Fabulous, she's been able to slowly taper off medication, which is something that was extremely important to her.
Wow, that's fantastic to hear. I'm wondering if I can get you to talk about some of the main game elements that Habitica uses. What do you see as the most important? You've got so many different ones, from the currency through to the kind of unlockable content, the little things that you can purchase, through to the side quests. What's some of the key mechanics and how they work, and what you think is really important to the experience?
I mean, at a basic level, the way we've set up the experience bar and experience points getting awarded for points and gold coins are really basic gamification elements that I think are recognizable to anybody who's ever played a game. I think that was the very, very first version of the app, where you could just, level up your little character and buy some gear. And then what we realized over time is that a lot of our users were really motivated by the gear purchasing element and the acquisition. So people definitely feel strongly about being able to acquire gold more quickly and acquire more digital assets. And then there is the additional element of the randomness of the drops that we generate. And so that is based on the principle of stochastic rewards. And the idea there is it's basically gambling. You don't know for sure if you're going to get the thing that you've been wanting. So you keep trying to do it. And basically what we've done is tie that into the things that you should be doing all along, and hopefully drive some motivation to be like, well, okay, I didn't want to clean yesterday, I'm going to clean today, or I haven't submitted my report, but there is this thing, if I do it, then I can get that final egg or potion drop that I've been waiting for. And that drives that motivation at a very early level. What we've also seen is that the cost-based system opened us up to the questing feature that you mentioned. And the nice thing about questing, which I think is unique to our app and I haven't seen so much in any of the other gamification applications, is that questing is designed to accommodate social accountability. So that if you don't do your list of daily commitments, essentially, the boss you're fighting doesn't just reduce your hit points, but it actually impacts the hit points of everybody else who's on the quest with you. So if you're not willing to complete your term paper on your own behalf, but maybe you'd be willing to complete it on behalf of everybody else who you've dragged into this quest with you.
And I'm wondering from that, what kind of role punishment or failure plays in gamification, and there's a lot of talk of safe failure, and I think that the Habitica's resurrection kind of mechanic has an interesting way to feed into that. You don't have to go back to the beginning like the good old 1990s console games. So I think that people can't bear that anymore. In one sense, a lot of people talk about the need for safe failure, where you're not really punished, but that is also a really key way in which we learn, by getting things wrong and having to pick ourselves up again. So Habitica's actual design really tries to foster that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying it is perfect yet. We're always looking for ways to improve people's experiences. But what we found is that when you fail on a quest, everybody notices, right? Especially when you fail at that magnitude, where you're seeing what they're calling total party kills. Somebody just has a bad day, and maybe a sequence of bad days successively, whereby people are just losing massive amounts of hit points. And usually in that case, what we see is kind of a social intervention, right? Like, hey, do you need help? Is there something going on? Do we maybe need to adjust your responsibilities? That sort of conversation tends to happen.
It sort of reminds me about the very common resistance to gamification, and everyone sort of says, I'm not a gamer, or I'm not competitive like that. But there's a really intricate relationship between competition and cooperation that comes through in gamification, and particularly Habitica and the collaborative element of those quests and guilds, because you're constantly, while there might be some level of competition, there's also a constant collaboration where you need to work together as well.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the things that we've always liked to emphasize is more of the community and the social interactions on Habitica. And the thing about the quest system and the way it's designed right now is that we were modeled originally on MMORPGs, right? Like a World of Warcraft, where you do team up and jointly pursue a goal together. And we've just always found that to be a more interesting mechanic, particularly as most other gamification solutions out there, particularly for enterprise, are targeted towards competition, right? There's a winner and a loser, and the loser frequently gets extremely demotivated. And that's why I find that outside of very particular contexts, like, for example, a sales environment, where everybody's sort of driven to be the top salesperson, and the gamification mechanic really just assists in that sort of friendly competition to begin with. What we were looking for is a collaborative environment where even the less highly ranked characters or players could still bring something to the team. Like, they're still making a valuable contribution and really shouldn't be overlooked just because they are at a lower tier.
Yeah, and I guess it comes down to really a lot of the reward and gratification from gamification, playing games, you kind of get the gratification within the discrete game text, and then you stop playing that, and then that will dissipate. But when you're trying to motivate yourself, really, when you're keeping up with things at work or making the bed consistently, all that kind of stuff, that's where a lot of the gratification comes from, isn't it? So it's actually got that closer connection to the real world activities, where that should be the main reward that Habitica is also giving, not just the leveling up, the getting the currency, customizing the avatar, but also the actual real world benefit of it is why it works so well.
Definitely. And that's actually how I explain it frequently to people who aren't believers in that gamification, like I said earlier, not a silver bullet, but what it does is bridge the large gap between your intention and your actual execution, right? So something that may seem hard and seem difficult to execute at the very beginning, gamification can help you break it down into smaller pieces to tackle a little bit at a time every day. And over time, you become used to the discomfort of trying out a new habit or working towards a new goal. And eventually, the hope is that the value of having accomplished that new goal or new habit becomes intrinsically rewarding on its own. The gamification is just a side note. And that's usually the point at which we're like, well, if it's getting too easy for you and it's not serving any other purpose, then, it's time to find a new thing to start working on.
Thanks so much for watching. Please feel free to subscribe to this channel and leave us a comment or question down below.
And you can find Our Gamified World on Twitter, Instagram, SoundCloud and Facebook. The links are in the description.
And join us next week as we explore the impact of gamification on education.
Bye for now.